Who were the mound builders of ancient America? Did they have a complex social hierarchy? In this video, I'm going to explore how these ancient societies, the ancient mound builders, might have been structured and what it reveals about their culture and accomplishments. So as many of you probably know, stretching across North America, the ancient mound builders created some of the most impressive, oldest earthen structures in human history. These civilizations, particularly the Mississippian, the Adena, and the Hopewell cultures, built mounds for purposes like burials, ceremonies, defensive means, and some were even used as potentially homes. But did they also have a social hierarchy tied in with the mounds and their society in general? What can these monumental earthen structures tell us about their leaders, their workers, their artisans, their spiritual beliefs? So let's first start by understanding who the mound builders were and the cultures that they left behind. The Mississippian culture, which peaked around 1000 AD, is perhaps the best known group of mound builders in ancient America. Cahokia, located in present-day Illinois, was the largest city in pre-Columbian North America, and it was one of the largest cities in the known world at the time, with a population exceeding 20,000. At its center, the massive Monk's Mound rises 100 feet above the ground, and it stood as a testament to the city's power and engineering skills. Cahokia was not simply just an urban center. It was the heart of a complex society that relied on agriculture, primarily corn, beans, and squash, as well as extensive trade networks that reached very far and wide, potentially as far as Mesoamerica. Before the Mississippian culture, the Adena culture and the Hopewell cultures thrived before them. The Adena from around 1000 BC to roughly 0 AD are best known for their burial mounds, which many contain elaborate grave goods. The Hopewell had a much more elaborate burial system, and the Hopewell flourished from around 200 BC to roughly 500 AD. And they're best remembered for their expansive trade networks and ceremonial mounds. Through these networks, they traded exotic materials like mica, obsidian, and seashells, which connected the regions of North America and beyond. So let's delve into the potential social structure of these societies. Who were their potential leaders? Who built the mounds? And where did the common person fit in a society like this? At the very top of the Mississippian social hierarchy, they likely had elites of some kind. They would be rulers who controlled the political and economic aspects of the society, which the economic aspects were mainly agriculturally related, of course. Cahokia's monumental construction projects were also a peak of the society and an important political influence among the commoner. Big projects such as Monk's Mound would suggest a powerful central authority of some kind, possibly a chiefdom, if you will, of hereditary kinship, a hereditary leadership. It would probably operate more or less like a republic in a sense, where small city-states would come together and conglomerate into one giant culture, if that makes sense. Cahokia would have had a sprawling metropolis around its general vicinity, more akin to like suburbs today. So, the spiritual and ceremonial leaders likely held the significant power. The mounds themselves were not only burial sites, but also places for rituals and ceremonies that may have linked to the spiritual and political leadership of the society. For example, We know this because artifacts were found in elite graves, like finely crafted copper items and carved bone, which suggests that the ruling class had access to special resources and their leadership was closely tied to religious and ceremonial roles. Below the elites, they probably had a class of skilled artisans and traders, though the leaders probably held significant influence over the trade as a whole. But the artisans and traders were people responsible for crafting luxury goods used by the elite and both the elite and the commoner, really. And they were the ones that were probably participating in the long distance travel for the trade for the said ruler. Something that is pretty easy to imagine, right? Their work was essential in maintaining the wealth and the power of the higher classes and really society as a whole. At the base of the social pyramid were, of course, the farmers and laborers. They were essentially the backbone of these societies, working the land and helping build the earthen structures that we marvel at today. We can infer that mound building was a communal effort, requiring the labor of many people to move vast amounts of earth and construct these monumental structures. So was there room for social mobility within these hierarchies? Could someone potentially rise from the lower classes to achieve elite status? Evidence from burial practices suggests that while the elite had distinct privileges, some commoners may have had the opportunity to rise throughout the status in their lifetime. Some graves contained more elaborate goods, which could signify an individual's exceptional achievements, whether in trade, warfare, or spiritual leadership. However, social mobility was likely limited. While some individuals could have gained status through accomplishments, it seems that the ruling class maintained a degree of hereditary privilege. The centralized nature of Cahokia, with its large ceremonial gatherings, suggests that elite families held sway over the population. Gender roles were likely distinct as well, with men performing many of the labor-intensive tasks, while women may have had spiritual and domestic roles. Though some women likely held power in spiritual or ceremonial capacities as well. Evidence from some sites suggests that women could have been very important figures in religious leadership and really leadership as a whole. So how do we know about this potential social hierarchy? Let's take a closer look at some evidence, archaeological evidence, such as the size and complexity of the mounds themselves, which would suggest a well-organized society capable of large-scale construction. At Cahokia, the layout of the city with its central plaza and surrounding mounds points to a planned and sophisticated society. The discovery of elaborate burial goods, particularly in elite graves, provides further clues to that social stratification. Items like finely crafted jewels, tools, and ceremonial objects would tell us that certain individuals or families had privileged positions. When we compare these societies to others, such as the Maya, for example, or even the Egyptians, we see similar patterns of elite control, for a lack of better words, and some sort of religious influence, for a lack of better words, and then, of course, the economic specialization, for a lack of better words. And while the mound builders left no real written records that we know of, their mounds and artifacts would suggest a comparable social complexity to these other ancient religions. Yet, the absence of written records means there's still much we don't truly know with 100% certainty about these societies. The challenges of interpreting their past are compounded by modern biases and the destructive impact of settlement colonization. So, what can we conclude about the mound builders' social hierarchy? The mound builders likely had a complex social structure with elites, religious leaders, skilled craftsmen, farmers, mound builders themselves, and Their monumental mounds would stand as proof of a society with a clear division of labor, power, and purpose. Though we may never fully understand their hierarchy, the mounds themselves offer us a glimpse into the lives of these remarkable people, the mound builders. So thank you for joining me on this exploration of the potential social hierarchy of the mound builders of ancient America. If you enjoyed this deep dive into an ancient American culture, then make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on more fascinating ancient historical content on the channel. So make sure to stay curious, keep exploring the past, and until next time, it's been Dookie, and I'm out. I love ya.